I grew up in a small town in Arkansas, a place where dreams felt too far to reach. My mother raised 2 kids alone after my father left. She worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. I learned early that money meant safety. Every dollar mattered. Every mistake cost more than it should. I studied hard because failure wasn't an option. At night, I worked in the campus cafeteria. During the day, I tutored students who drove luxury cars. They spent more on coffee than my mom made in a week. But I kept smiling and kept grinding. I graduated top of my class with a finance degree. $12,000 in debt felt like a miracle. Most of my classmates owed 6 figures. I started my first job in a small firm in Little Rock. $38,000 a year. A studio apartment that smelled like instant noodles. I spent nights studying for my CFA exams. While others partied, I studied market trends. I passed all 3 levels on my first try. Only 20% ever do. 5 years later, I moved to Austin for a better job. $85,000 starting salary felt like gold. Now, at 32, I make $125,000 a year. I have my own house in Cedar Park. 3 bedrooms, a garage, a little backyard. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I drive a paid-off Honda Accord. My savings account has $85,000. I max out my 401k every year. I don't wear designer suits or chase flashy things. I value peace more than attention. People call me boring. I call it being prepared. I spend weekends hiking or reading about investments. I play tennis sometimes, though I'm not great at it. My life is quiet, structured, safe. It might sound dull to some, but I built it from nothing. Every inch of comfort I have came from sleepless nights. Every small success was carved out of sacrifice. I never thought much about love. I figured it would happen naturally someday. Someone would appreciate stability over excitement. Someone who wanted something real. Then Madison appeared, like sunlight through glass. She smiled in that coffee shop like she already knew me. She said she admired my dedication. She said I was the kind of man who had his life together. I believed her. Maybe that was my first mistake. Because when you grow up poor, attention feels like love. Compliments feel like safety. I didn't know yet that she was studying me. Not because she cared, but because she wanted to see how much she could take. I thought I'd found peace in her eyes. But really, I had just stepped into the storm. I met Madison at a coffee shop in downtown Austin. She sat by the window with a laptop and a ring light. Her makeup was flawless, like a magazine cover. She said she was creating content for a beauty brand. Her voice was soft, but her confidence filled the room. I made a small comment about the market news on her screen. She smiled, leaned closer, and asked if I worked in finance. When I said yes, her eyes lit up like I had said millionaire. She called me impressive. She said stability was attractive. No one had ever said that to me before. We talked for an hour that day. She laughed at all my jokes. She touched my hand when she thanked me for the coffee. I walked away thinking she was different. She texted me that night and every night after. Our first few months were perfect. She always looked beautiful, always smelled expensive. She loved nice restaurants and rooftop bars. She'd order cocktails I couldn't pronounce and smile at me. She'd tell me I was the best man she'd ever dated. I believed her because I wanted to. But slowly, things changed. Her compliments turned into requests. She wanted nicer places, fancier gifts, bigger gestures. She said her exes never cared enough to spoil her. She said I was different, that I could afford it. At first it was small things. A handbag here, a dinner there. Then it became routine. If I didn't offer, she'd pout or go silent. She always talked about our future, but never about sharing it. She'd post everything online, like we were a luxury brand. Her followers loved it. Couple goals, they wrote. But I knew the truth. She made $30,000 a year, pretending to live like a celebrity. Every outfit was a loan from her credit cards. Every smile was a filter. She said she worked hard as an influencer, but I never saw it. Most days she slept in and complained about being burnt out. She spent hours editing selfies and shopping online. Boxes started showing up at my house by accident. She said it was easier to ship things to me. I didn't argue. I was in love, or maybe in denial. I thought if I gave her enough comfort, she'd stay. But the more I gave, the more she took. She wanted to move in with me after 8 months. She said it would save her money. But she refused to pay for anything. She said I already paid the mortgage, so why should she? Every time I questioned it, she cried. If you loved me, you wouldn't care about money. Those words stuck like poison. I started feeling guilty for being responsible. I started doubting my own values. But deep down I knew. Madison didn't love me. She loved the life she thought I could give her. And I was too blind to see I was just a means to an end. Madison introduced me to her friends after 4 months. They called themselves the Queens. 4 women who thought the world revolved around them. There was Sophie, a hairstylist at a luxury salon. She made decent money, but spent it faster than she earned it. Designer bags, fancy dinners, weekend trips to Chilam. Her parents constantly bailated her out, but she acted independent. Then there was Emma, a freelance photographer. She took pictures of influencers for cheap and called it art. She lived with her parents, drove her mom's old car, and pretended it was a creative choice. Her entire life was an illusion wrapped in pastel filters. Ashley worked in retail management at a high-end store. She made the most money, but worked the least. She called in sick to shop and bragged about discounts. Every photo she posted screamed success, but hid exhaustion. They were all versions of the same lie. Beautiful, broke, and desperate to look rich. The first time I met them, they sized me up immediately. Sophie smirked and said, "You're the finance guy, right?" Emma laughed, "So basically an accountant." I corrected them, but they didn't care. They made jokes about my suburban house and quiet lifestyle. "How domestic," Sophie said. Ashley rolled her eyes. I could never live that far from downtown. They laughed like I was the punchline. Madison joined in, pretending it was harmless. But it wasn't harmless. It was humiliating. Still, I smiled through it because I loved her. After that, they were always around. Brunches, dinners, shopping trips. And somehow, the check always came to me. If I hesitated, Madison would whisper, "Please, don't embarrass me in front of my friends." I started paying for meals I didn't enjoy with people I didn't like. It became normal. 200 here, 500 there. Money disappeared like sand through fingers. They talked about manifesting wealth while drowning in debt. They posted girl boss quotes while begging parents for rent. Their friendship was built on envy and validation. Every gathering felt like a performance. Every smile rehearsed. Every compliment transactional. I was the outsider, the stable one they secretly despised. They mocked me for being boring, but envied my control. Sometimes, I caught their glances when the bill came. A flicker of relief, a silent agreement that I'd handle it. I told myself it was fine. That generosity meant love. But I was slowly buying acceptance that never truly existed. The worst part wasn't the money. It was watching Madison become one of them. Her laughter changed. Her voice changed. She became someone I didn't recognize. Someone shallow and performative. Someone who cared more about followers than feelings. I kept hoping she'd come back to who she was. But she was too busy pretending to be perfect. And I was too blind to see that perfection was a lie. By month 8, the cracks began to show. Madison wanted to move in with me. She said it would bring us closer, make us stronger. But what she really meant was free rent. Her plan was simple. She'd live in my house and pay nothing. When I asked about contributing, she looked offended. "You were already paying before I came," she said. "It's not like my being here costs you extra." I tried to explain utilities, groceries, maintenance. She rolled her eyes and said love shouldn't be about money. "If you loved me, you wouldn't keep score." That sentence echoed in my mind for days. She always knew how to twist guilt into a weapon. Soon after, I noticed the bills rising. My grocery costs doubled. My streaming accounts were always active during work hours. Packages arrived daily: makeup, clothes, random gadgets. She always had an excuse. "Oh, it's just PR gifts," she'd say. But the receipts told a different story. When I asked, she'd cry and say I didn't trust her. She had mastered the art of emotional manipulation. Every argument ended with me apologizing. Every issue became my fault. I began tracking expenses secretly. Over 2 months, I spent nearly $800 on dinners, parties, and things I didn't even want. Her friends started assuming I'd always cover the cost. I was becoming their silent investor. I felt trapped between pride and love. Then one night, I overheard a phone call. Madison was laughing with Sophie. She said, "It's fine, my boyfriend pays for everything." She called me her financial safety net. Her backup plan. The words cut deeper than any insult. When she hung up, I confronted her. She cried again, swore she didn't mean it. But the mask had slipped too far. The next week, she finally confessed. $28,000 in credit card debt. 6 cards maxed out. Designer clothes, trips, endless shopping. All for an image she couldn't afford. I tried to help, I really did. I offered to make a plan, set a budget, fix things. She smirked and said, "Or you could just pay it off. As an investment in our future." That was the moment I broke. Not because of the money, but because she saw me as a solution, not a person. She didn't love me. She loved the lifestyle I provided. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. The woman beside me was a stranger. A beautiful illusion, built on lies and debt. I realized I wasn't in a relationship. I was funding a fantasy. And I knew, sooner or later, I'd have to wake up. Ashley's birthday came a month later. She rented an expensive rooftop venue downtown. Everyone dressed like they were walking a red carpet. Madison spent $450 on her outfit. She said she couldn't wear something already on Instagram. On the drive there, she gave me instructions. "Please try to be more fun tonight," she said. "Some of the other guys are really successful. Don't talk about work." I nodded silently and kept driving. The party was everything I expected. Loud music, fake smiles, endless selfies. People posing for photos every 5 minutes. Conversations about brands, gossip, and followers. I stood in the corner with my drink, trying to fit in. Sophie made the first jab. "So Ethan, still crunching numbers all day," she said. Her voice dripped with sarcasm. Emma added, "I swear you talk about stocks more than people." Laughter followed. Madison didn't say a word to defend me. She just smiled nervously and looked away. After a while, Ashley clapped her hands. "Okay, time for the truth circle," she shouted. Everyone gathered around in a big ring of chairs. It was their tradition, a game of brutal honesty. In reality, it was just cruelty disguised as friendship. Each person gave helpful advice to the others. When it was my turn, Ashley smiled sweetly. "I just think you're predictable," she began. "Too serious, too practical, too boring." Emma giggled and said, "He checks the price before ordering." Even Madison laughed weakly. Sophie leaned forward and said, "That house of yours, so suburban." They kept going, line after line, tearing me apart. Every accomplishment turned into a flaw. Owning a home meant I lacked excitement. Being responsible meant I was dull. Having savings meant I was stingy. They mocked my car, my clothes, my job, my hobbies. Each word hit harder than the last. Madison sat silently, eyes on the floor. She let them destroy me for entertainment. When Ashley asked if I had feedback, I smiled. Actually, yes, I said calmly. The room quieted. I looked at each of them slowly. Ashley, does your boss know you called in sick to go shopping? Her face turned pale. Emma shifted uncomfortably. And Emma, how's that lawsuit from the photographer you copied? Gasps rippled through the room. Then I turned to Sophie. Still doing hair out of your apartment without a license. Silence. Madison's hand trembled. And you, Madison, I said quietly. Should we talk about your $28,000 in debt? Tears filled her eyes. The circle of power collapsed into chaos. Voices rose, phones came out, arguments erupted. I stood up, finished my drink and said, thanks for the honesty, that was enlightening. Then I walked out, leaving them to burn in the truth. I drove home that night in complete silence. My phone buzzed nonstop, with messages I ignored. They wanted to apologize, to explain, to save face. But I was done being their entertainment. For 18 months, I'd been their target. Now, I would become their consequence. I didn't yell or threaten. I simply did what I was trained to do, research. I spent the next 2 weeks collecting information. Public records, company listings, social media posts. Everything they had bragged about became evidence. Ashley came first. I gathered proof of her fake sick days and shopping trips. Screenshots, timestamps, receipts, all real. I sent them to her company's HR department. A week later, she was fired for attendance fraud. Emma was next. I found every photo she had stolen from real photographers. I emailed side-by-side comparisons to their agencies. Within days, lawsuits started piling up. Sophie followed. I filed anonymous complaints with the state cosmetology board. No license, no sanitation, no legal business. Her landlord found out and evicted her immediately. Madison's turn came last. I reported her return fraud to the stores she'd scammed. Credit card companies reopened her accounts for investigation. Within weeks, her so-called luxury life collapsed. Her credit was ruined, her brand deals vanished. The queens became ghosts online. Their perfect photos stopped. Their stories went silent. But the real show started after the silence. The calls began one by one. Sophie first, her voice shaking. She said she was living in her car. She begged me to help her handle the legal documents. I'll work for free, I'll clean your house, she cried. I told her to contact a lawyer. Then I hung up. 2 days later, Emma called at 6 in the morning. She was sobbing so hard, I could barely understand her. Her parents had kicked her out. The lawsuits were real. She said she was scared, broke, and alone. I told her the truth. You made your choices. Ashley's call came a week later. She couldn't find work anywhere. Her company told every employer why she was fired. She said she'd work any job I could find. I said, you should have thought of that before mocking mine. Then Madison called. She was hysterical, saying she missed me, loved me, needed help. Her parents refused to pay her legal fees. She wanted me to cover $15,000 for her lawyer. She promised to move in, cook, clean, be a perfect partner. I laughed. Now you want the boring life you hated. She cried harder, begging. But I'd already hung up. The next day, I changed my number. I sat in my quiet, boring house, drinking coffee in peace. They wanted excitement. Now they had it, chaos, debt, and consequences. For the first time in a long while, I finally felt free. Weeks passed, and the noise faded. No more calls. No more fake apologies. Their perfect lives had crumbled into dust. Ashley moved back with her parents. Emma deleted all her social media. Sophie disappeared completely. And Madison, she vanished behind silence and shame. Sometimes I still see their old posts online. Smiles frozen in time, pretending everything was fine. But I know the truth behind those filters. They built their world on lies, and I simply pulled the thread. I didn't ruin them. I just revealed who they really were. People say revenge doesn't bring peace. Maybe they're right. But justice does. I wake up every morning to quiet. No drama, no chaos, no manipulation. Just the sound of my own life, finally mine again. They called me boring, predictable, unexciting. Now I call it freedom. They wanted a life full of adventure. Well, they got it. Only it wasn't the kind they could post about. It was the kind that ends in bankruptcy, lawsuits, and regret. And I don't feel sorry at all.